What's going on, my babies? Welcome back to another episode of The Spiritual Word. As always, I apologize for any noises in the background in advance and anything of that nature. And as always, before I start these off, holy crap, I'm really discombobulated. Before I start these, I want to start these off by stating that these are for entertainment purposes only. Always do your own research to come to your own conclusions, to have your own answers, to make your own decisions. And I believe in your ability to do so, as you've proven me by clicking on today's episode. And before I get into the topic of today's episode, I also want to state that I upload Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. Mountain Time, except for the last week of every month. The last week of every month is kind of like my break time for me to mentally recharge and to kind of sit with all of the episodes that I've made previous and kind of like gather my own insight from the episodes that I'm making. And what else? I think that's it for now. That's all I have for now. So let's get into today's episode. So in today's episode, I want to talk about the simple fact of what we are. And I just want to simply talk about consciousness. And like I think I said in the last episode, the last upload of last month, that I started reading this book called The Science of the Mind. And I'm sorry if you can hear the wind and like all the airplanes going by and all that. I'm sorry for that. But anyway, so I'm reading this book called The Science of the Mind. Totally brain fart. Totally had a brain fart. I can't speak right now for some apparent reason. So I'm just going to sit with myself really quickly. And I'm going to have you here with me so you know the process of grounding. So I'm not really feeling like I'm like in the air. But as not being able to clearly get a sentence out has made it very obvious that I'm not grounded. So this is my technique for grounding, and maybe you'll take this as like an insight for yourself. So take a deep breath and try to just be here and be in my skin. And maybe drink some water. Just because I was working out, so it might just be my heart pumping crazy. So, now that I've grounded myself in front of you, and also before, I don't think I stated this as well, I have an audio version of this podcast anywhere you can find podcasts, audio versions of podcasts. And I have a video version of this episode, or of all my episodes, on YouTube, and they're both named The Spiritual Word. So you can find this on YouTube or Apple Podcasts, whichever one. So if you are listening to the podcast and you want to go see what I'm talking about when I mention grounding and drinking water, you can see the video version of this on YouTube. So anyways, so I'm reading this book called The Science of the Mind, if you want to read it for yourself, just because I think that there's a lot of insight there that might be able to help you if you're a logical thinker. And the reason I state, like, if you're a logical thinker, is because you need practical evidence to trust in something that you don't see, if that makes sense. Like, I myself am not religious, and when people try to give me religious ideas or religious anything really, it seems very hard to grasp just because I'm not fully convinced of that reality. And so the book talks about things that religion goes deep into, but it talks about it in a way that's grounding for me. And I think that's what's really helpful, just because I myself am a logical thinker. Like, if something doesn't logically make sense to me, I am not going to feed that idea. And so with that being said, I'm reading this book, and the main thing that it expresses is the idea of what we are, or the idea of consciousness, or the idea of the one mind, or the one soul, or the body, or nothing, or God. Whatever that thing that you can't explain, the thing that animates us, the thing that we have no grasp or no understanding of, whatever that thing is for you, whether you believe that to be God, whether that be consciousness for you, whether that be nothing for you. that's what he talks about in this book, or the author. I don't know his name, but I should probably read his name just so I can have more, so I have some type of reference for when people, hear the name of the book and might want to know the name of the author. So, besides that's just a me thing. So, I was reading it, and the main thing that this person talks about over and over and over and over and over and over and over. This is a very, very long book, by the way. But he talks about how consciousness, or the one thing, or the one soul, or whatever, God is for you. Whatever the thing is for you. The thing that animates us, the thing that we have no grasp or no understanding of. That thing is a universal thing. So, that thing, or consciousness itself, is me, is you, is the phone, is the sound waves that is coming out of my throat when my vocal cords rub against each other. It's everything. And then he goes into talking about what we are, because it's kind of like when religious people say that we are the sons and the daughters and the children of God. We are God and the reproduction of said God. Like, if God can have babies, we would be the babies. And all animals would be the babies, and this phone would be a baby. Like, it's a really hard concept to state in one sentence, because it can't be stated in one sentence, but I'm gonna try to make this as easy to understand as possible. For the sake of simplicity, and for the sake that this is going up on YouTube, and, I'm not gonna take like a whole hour to describe this, although it could be, hours and hours and hours and hours of me trying to describe this one thing for you to understand. But just to make this clear, we, or God, or consciousness, or the one mind, we, right? The statement of we, us all together. It is it's like a cup. A cup holds water together. It holds us together. We holds us together because it creates a unity of you and I. We. And words are very, very important for this idea and these topics. So we, as one unified thing, branches off into I and you. Or me and you. And me and you are a baby that came from we. There had to be a we for there to be a you and I. And there had to be a you and I for there to be a we. And that's what the one mind is. And what, whatever you believe to be God, or whatever the case is. So we are consciousness, but everything is consciousness, because everything comes from and it comes out of consciousness. That's why I say that we're the babies. But the only reason I say that is because it's hard for us to understand that everything is its baby. Money is its baby, hospitals are its baby, doctors are its baby, lawyers are its babies, judges are its babies, my hat is its baby. And I gotta get more touchy on the subject of like hats and stuff, or like material objects, because I feel like that came out of us, but we are God. Therefore, the hat is also its baby, even though it's kind of partially my baby, if that makes sense. Like, I had to come up with the idea of a hat, or I had to come up with the idea of this episode in order to make this episode, but I really didn't come up with this episode. So that's why I say it's kind of like touchy for me right now, but I feel like that's just a part of consciousness that I don't understand yet. So anyways, basically, consciousness is everything. Conscious creates everything, just like when religious people say that God created everything and blah blah blah. And now you might be wondering, well, if consciousness, or God created everything, why is there good or bad? And you might come up with a concept of duality. There has to be a we for there to be a they, or there has to be a we for us to have unity as me and you, or you and I. Now, this is something also that he talks about a lot in this book, and I'm gonna get the author's name just because I don't like saying he. So this person writes this book, and as he's explaining the concept of actually having no duality, unity creates duality. And I had a really hard time understanding this, or like having a clear way to like state this, just because I'm like, what the fuck, what do you mean? And basically, to make this very, very, very simple, unity makes separation because we have free will. Like, because I have free will, I have the choice of going out and selling crack if I wanted to. You know what I want? But you know what I mean? And same thing goes for, I have the free will to go out and be a doctor. I get to choose. And our concept of heaven and hell, or black and white, or, whatever separation you want to create, good and bad, up and down, it's all in the same category. Like, for example, if I were to say you and I, and as I looked at the timer, it was 11:11, so listen to what I'm saying. This is fucking good. So, if I'm here and I'm saying you and I are separate beings, to us, ourselves, my eyes are going to perceive us to be separate. Why? Because we are two different things. We are two different things, and I use quotation marks. And the reason I use quotation marks when I say that is because we're both a human. We're both one category. And now you can go in deeper and be like, okay, well, what about cats and dogs? They're not human. They're an animal. We're also an animal. And then you're like, okay, well, what about houses and cars and, clothes and all that? It's all matter. We are matter. This hat is matter. We can go even deeper and to say that we're all waves. We're all a wavelength. We're all a wave of energy. We are all energy. And then you can go even deeper and to say that there's really nothing. There is no thing. Nothing. Not one thing in this universe. And that nothing, that one thing of being nothing, has to be conceived through itself. So even if you want to say that we are two separate things, you can't even conceive the idea that we are two separate things, because nothing will dictate that separation other than the illusions that you put in front of you. And the illusions can be, put on and layered and layered and layered and layered and layered. And that's what separates you. That's free will. You have the free will to say you and I are not the same thing. Because you have free will to think as you want to. And your free will is the mind itself. Your consciousness is what's animating you. And your consciousness has the conscious decision of whether or not it wants to be here. And your consciousness gets to choose if it lies to itself or if it doesn't lie to itself. Or if it sees the matter of the fact for what it is. Or if it chooses to think or respond in a logical manner or in an irrational manner. That is free will. That is the mind. That is consciousness. That is unity. This is why we get duality in unity, because I can go up, but I can also go down. Now you might be thinking, well, up is a different direction than down. But there's still a direction. It's still a direction. So it's all here right now. Like if I was consciousness and I had you in this bubble and you're right here and your best friend's over here, you could say that you're separate, but that would be an illusion. And if you're listening to this on the audio version, it's basically like saying if I had a cup of water and you are a drop and your friend is a drop, you can sit there and argue with each other and say, well, I'm a different drop than you. I'm a bigger drop than you. I'm a smaller drop than you. But at the end of the day, you're both water. And so the way that I conceptualize, and as I look down at my time again, I'm filming this episode at 11:44. And when I looked at the time, it was 14. It was 14:14. So, like, listen to this shit. Because I also recognize that synchronicities are only something available to you if you're using them, right? Like, most people who are not consciously aware of, like their free will and their choices, and they're just kind of on autopilot. They're on autopilot out of choice, and being on autopilot is actually the kind of like the natural state that we're always in, and the only reason that we come out of autopilot is because of like something traumatic. And usually when you experience something traumatic, there's a lot of turmoil that puts a lot of illusions in front of you. And when you have so many illusions, it's kind of hard to see, it's kind of hard to walk. And so that's what gets you to uncover and uncover and uncover until you can't do it anymore. And I feel like that's why people spiritually seek. That because we're here to seek. We're here to find. We're here to experience. Like, consciousness itself is trying to gather as much information as it can physically do. And because there's no limitations to consciousness, it has no limit. And I remember posting videos back maybe 2 years ago, and I used to only post on my TikTok just because I feel like the shorter videos were a lot easier for me to make, so I just make shorter videos. And at the time, I mentally couldn't handle doing too much. I really couldn't. And because I had different goals, and people change, and I had different goals. And I remember sitting at my home, quotation marks, home at the time, and I had this huge epiphany that I always have this revelation over and over that, oh my God, I'm God, oh my God, I'm God, oh my God, I'm consciousness, oh my God, I am what I perceive to be as God, I am what I perceive to be as nothing, I am what I perceive to be as everything, I am what animates this reality. And I'm always having this realization over and over and over and over and over and over and over. And I think it's fun for me, which is why I do it. And because it's kind of, I don't know, it's just fun. It's just exciting. It's kind of like when you go up the roller coaster and then you finally go back down and you're like, oh my gosh, that's exciting. It's exhilarating. And then you slowly go back up and back down, it's an up and down thing. And I feel like that's why a lot of people like life itself. You like the things that you do, even if you say you don't like to do them. I know people that love to gossip, and, power to them. They're doing what they love. But then when they try to, argue with me that they don't like doing it, I'm like, you like doing it, or else you wouldn't do it. That's the whole point of us existing. You wouldn't do something if you didn't like to do something. If you didn't like to do that thing. You know what I mean? If you hate, quotation marks, if you say that you hate your 9 to 5, you would quit. And you would choose consciously to create a better circumstance for yourself. And not out of choice that we're blah, blah, blah. I don't want to make it sound like it's your fault, because it's not your fault. But you have to recognize that you're playing into this by allowing it to hurt you. And I'm not going to say that that's completely your fault, because sometimes you're not really conscious of that you have the choice. Because some people swear that they don't have a choice in this reality, which is their choice. So I can't sit here and be like, but you do have a choice. And then you're like, no, I don't. Because like I said, if you argue that you're going up while I argue that you're going down, you're going to believe whichever one you choose to believe. And either way, it doesn't really matter. Just because we're both right, but we're also both wrong. I could sit here and argue that people make their life choices and all that, but if I went up to a homeless person and I'm like, did you plan for this to happen? They'd probably say no. You know what I mean? That's why I take everything that I say with a grain of salt, because, I'm still learning. I'm still a kid, so it takes time to do everything. And I'm only doing as much as I can cover. So, back on topic, and I'm just gonna put this into a nice little conclusion, a little bow tie it up for you to have as a gift. Basically, in this book, he talks about the fact that we are matter, over and over and over and over and over. And we are the creation of matter. We are the idea that conceived matter. We are the idea of conception. We are conception. And the best way that I can put that into a basic understanding, it's if we were all the ocean, we'd have to be the idea of the ocean in order for there to be an ocean. So we are the idea of God. And all that God has is ideas. And I will get into that in the next part. I'm going to leave this here. And then tomorrow's episode will be the part 2 to like what we are again. So if, science, spirituality, psychology, self-help, science are all things that you're interested in, I recommend following or subbing whatever platform you're finding me on. And I upload Monday through Friday, like I said, except for the last week of every month. That's my mental health break week. So yeah, thanks for tuning in and tapping in, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.